Oh, morning guys. Just sneaking out the house before the most beloved wakes up. Try and get some jobs on the way. Hopefully, I think I've sorted out the video problem in that it looks like for some reason the Apple Pad thingy that the most beloved bought doesn't like the videos from the camcorder. Put them onto the old laptop, Windows programs on it, and it seems to have uploaded fine and an awful lot quicker. I did a 10-minute clip, which was the last one I put on, and that loaded in about the same amount of time as the normal 4 or 5 minute clips do. So all the fingers and bits crossed, and that's sorted out. Unfortunately, also the clips that I had made previously, I'd mentioned that I'd done quite a few over the last 3 or 4 weeks. I'm guessing, but from loading them onto the Apple and then trying to take them back off, it's altered the format or something in them, so they won't load. So anyway, here I am today, and I'm just going to show you a few bits and pieces, what from the other video, what I'm going to crack on and do now. So I'll keep drinking the coffee, although this is decaf, second cup today, so I'm on the decaf now. I try not to have too much caffeine; it doesn't do me any good. And I think my accent's probably hard enough to understand anyway without caffeine. So I'm going to set myself up and I'll just show you what I'm doing as I'm going along. So guys, what I'm doing today, I'll just show you over here, is I've got a few things I want to do. One of the first ones is I've got the Brownells here. I'm not sure you can see that, the Brownells ATP. If you're using this stuff, you've got to give it a really good check, really good mix up, because it does settle quite easily. When it came, it had 2 huge clumps of the material right in the middle of it, so it took me quite a while to give it a really good mix, get it really even consistent, which helps with the helps when you're doing the decarb. So from there I have some, I've got a number of small pieces of steel, as I mentioned in the other one, that I've cut up a bar stock with, and I'm going to be just redoing the testing temperatures that I did around the best ones I found before, whereas before I was looking at the grain structure. Now I'm going to use the files that I've got, so hopefully that will back up what I found and sort out my quandary of hardening temperature against the normalising. And like I say, it just seems strange that most of the things I read about O1 say if you're doing stock removal, it doesn't need normalising. At the most, if it's had a bit of heat and a bit of punishment, a bit of a stress relieving cycle. But I'm going to go about I'm going to do a video on the different terminology as well, because I think that gets used quite broadly. So that's one job. Then once I've got that in the kiln, that'll be the first job. Then what I have here, I'll just have to turn this around, is, as I showed on the other one, these are all some of the blanks that have virtually been sorted. So these are going to be my templates. Just got to finish off the grinding for that around the handles and put the holes in and things like that. Then I'll have a set of templates for my first set. That's a few that I'm actually doing at the moment to get to the same stage as all the ones I showed you before, which are then ready for grinding. So that's another job. And down here I have a number of bits and pieces, and I'm going to make myself a couple of to make a couple of plunge guides, and this is going to be made of something that I've been reading about, which is a basically a bubble guide. So I can make a little movable bubble guide, but I'll show you guys how I do that. And one of the first things I'll show, something I finished off yesterday when I got in from work, was my grinder. And if I can just, because it's bloody heavy, over it goes. Oops, just stop. Sorry about the camera work, guys. There we go. And nice and steady. Bump. And there we have my grinder on its side, ready to replace the platen with the small wheel which will then allow me to do much more accurately the handle grooves for the fingers on the various knives. So I'll show you the result of that next time around. So they're the things I'm just going to be cracking on with now. I'm going to try and make this a bit of a longer video and show you the bits as I do them. The reason I'm going to knock off at the moment is I always warm the pieces. You need to warm the steel before you put them into the before you coat them with the anti-carb. I'm not even sure if I'm... There we go. And the reason I'm going to knock off at the moment is this. When I've tried to do that before in a different video, I couldn't hear a word. But basically, I'm going to, as I've shown before about putting the ATP on, I'll just be warming the steel up a little bit. They'll get probably 3 coats of the anti-carb into the kiln, and then obviously they'll sit in there for, well, it'll be hour and a quarter, probably hour and a quarter. I think by the time it's got to temperature, then they've had the soak and the different, so probably actually about an hour and a half altogether. And then, but that will then give me time to crack on with the other bits and pieces. So with that, I'll crack on with this. Well, as you can see, guys, I've got the test pieces of steel into the kiln. The controller is ramping up nicely. Everything's sorted out here, so there's no untoward moving around, getting things quenched. Probe there to make sure I get the oil to the right temperature before the steel goes in, and then we'll see where we go from there. Over there, I'm just having my first proper setup for the grinder on its side. A bit too high, I think. I do have an option under there. I can drop it down about another 3 or 4 inches, but I want to make sure there's plenty of airspace underneath there to keep the fan in the motor cooler. But it's a little bit high, so I'm going to drop that down to make sure I keep it clean on the bench. Everything's set up here, ready just to hand, so I can just pick the things up and get cracking. So that's where these little bits and pieces are at, and I will crack on. What I'm actually doing a bit of a check on here is I have my small little small oven here. This is I've been using this for drying out handle scales before I do the stabilising. But I had an idea watching a video on YouTube by Sandy from Jacklaw, who recommended when you've done the hardening that the blanks are kept above 50 degrees C, which is about 120, and that you keep them above that temperature until you get them into the tempering oven for the first temper cycle. The reason for that is apparently once it gets below that temperature, they can develop what is called micro cracks. And these can only be seen if you send a piece of steel off to have it tested and, you know, looked at under a microscope. But on physical tests, he said that he's found the ones that he keeps warmer are harder to break than the ones which are allowed to fully cool. So I'm actually running a test in here because what I've found with this is it runs a lot hotter than the temperature on the side. I mean, I originally set this up and I set it to 40 degrees. I'd set this to 40 degrees when I first put it running. I've got the thermometer in here running and it actually came out at about 75. So I found this definitely runs very hot. So I've cranked this down now probably to about 30, and I'm going to see if that drops me to around just above the 50 mark. That means as I get a piece of steel out of the... I actually take a piece of the steel out of the kiln, give it a wipe down, clean it up, and then bob it straight into here to keep it warm while I get the others out. And that way everything's kept nice and warm. They can be wrapped up and taken in and put into my main oven then for the tempering cycles. So hopefully another little piece of the jigsaw there, just to turn out the best steel, the best knives that I'm able to, and just to show you guys some of the sort of like the fine detail that you have to go to get the best out of the steel and everything like that. So next job. But I've just from trial and error, I found the best way of making sure I get the spot on the actual times that I'm wanting to have. There we go, straight in. And although it doesn't really matter whether these warp or not because they're not going to become knives, again, when you're quenching, straight, don't bring the steel in and out of the oil, but just up and down in a straight line or backwards and forwards in a straight line. Try not to go side to side. That difference in that apparently can be enough to make a bit of a warp appear in the steel, so I try to keep these containers as full, virtually full, so I can go up and down or side to side. And that's the controller telling me it's done. That'll cool down now slowly. Right, how are we doing? 30, not yet. And with this as well, I'm trying to get these fully cool so that I can actually work with them. Whereas, as I said before, what I've started doing now since I've got the temperature set on my oven is I will, once they've been quenched, to keep them at the temperature, they'll have a quick clean up, and then they'll go into the my small oven in here to keep them above 60 degrees, and then I can get them up into the tempering kiln, stop any micro fractures occurring between the grain structure. So there we go. That should do that. without burning my fingers. Nice and hot, but just uncomfortable to handle, but not too hot. There we go. Put everything onto little bits of tissue, soak all the oil up. Gloves off. Always wear your gloves when you do anything like this. Lid back on. If I don't, I'll knock it over. Just grab you guys over here. And as you can see, I've cleaned my first piece and second piece. They've been cleaned up and put ready. I'll give this one a little clean up and then give the Rockwell files a try.